Hello everybody, welcome back. The next prop I'm going to be building is actually a prop that I built about 16 years ago. It was a falling tree prop, or what I did is I built the tree out of like 4-inch PVC pipes and poo noodles, and I had a skeleton on the backside. I had it hooked to a mechanism to where when they walk past it, I'd press a button and make it look like the skeleton's pushing this tree over, on top of the people as they walk past it. I got a lot of cool reactions from that tree, so I kind of want to revisit this. It's been a long time since I built this particular prop, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick picture of it. Now, this is the best picture I could find because it's been so long ago. I had to do a screenshot of it. But this will kind of give you an idea of what I'm looking to do. Okay, so you see in the picture where I have a character behind a tree, look like he's pushing the tree over. So my game plan here is I want to build an entire new tree out of all styrofoam. I want to build a nice, big, tall, tree. It's not going to have any kind of faces or anything like that on it because it's not a haunted tree. It's essentially a guy behind the tree pushing the tree over. So what I want the focal point to be on him. I want them to be looking at him thinking he's going to do something. He's going to jump out. He's going to make a noise or something like that. And then when this tree looks like it's falling on top of him and catches him off guard, that's what's going to give him the scare. So essentially that's what I'm looking for. Now, I have a feeling this is going to be a good sized prop as far as the actual construction of the tree itself, plus the mechanism, the character, the whole 9 yards. So I'm going to be breaking this up into 2 individual videos. The first video is going to be all about the tree itself, building the tree, figure out how I'm going to paint it, what I'm going to paint it with, all that kind of stuff. And then the second video is going to be all about the mechanical portion of it, what I'm going to use it to make it move, plus obviously the character itself and all the final touches. So let's go ahead and get started, see how this turns out. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that you kind of already noticed that I'm not using the normal extruded polystyrene that a lot of times you see us use for Halloween stuff, which use that pink, that blue, or that other stuff with the foil on the other side that you see me use a lot. I'm using this for a couple different reasons. One, I already had it, so I didn't have to buy anything. I have a friend of mine that had a few of these sheets left over from a project, and he knows I'm always building stuff with styrofoam, and he figured I'd probably be able to utilize them at some point, which looks like he was right. The other reason was I was originally going to build the main trunk portion of the tree with those big blocks that we get from Tractor Supply generally. But I don't have enough of those to build a full-size tree. I only have a couple of those left. I haven't been able to acquire anymore. So I decided to try giving this stuff a shot for the reason that not only are those big foam blocks, we know that they glue together really good, great stuff. And seeing how this is a lot of the same properties, pretty much the same principles as those stuff as far as the makeup of it. My hope is that these will glue together really good using that great stuff. If it does, it'll also be very easy to carve, lightweight, because lightweight is definitely going to be key for a prop like this, because the last thing you want it to be is too heavy and the mechanism doesn't want to work. So my game plan is to rip this into a bunch of strips, glue it together. If everything glues together really good, everything works really well, then you can go ahead and start carving it, start figuring out how I'm going to actually create my mechanical rig. So I want to make sure this works before I build the mechanical rig, because if this doesn't work, then I got to reconfigure how I'm going to build my tree. So this is going to be step 1, so let's get started. All right, so first problem I ran into, and it could just be the fact that these are old sheets, is the plastic that I got to take off. The one side seems to do okay to a point, but this other side that has the silver is really being stubborn. So this one's going to make me out to be a liar. But so what I ended up doing on the couple of the other sheets is I just took my rasp and just kind of roughed up the surface enough to make it to where when I do the expansion foam, there's enough pieces of the regular styrofoam sticking out that it'll catch that. So, but that's the first problem I ran into. But I think that's just because these are old pieces and they've been laying around for a while. So the sun has kind of weathered them to where they're a little bit harder to get apart. So, but I'm going to continue getting all the strips cleaned off, and then we'll start it gluing together. All right, just kind of show where I'm at the moment. I glued those together a couple days ago. They seem to be holding pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I have a bunch of drop pieces. I'm just kind of gluing on the top section here, and then gluing some scrap pieces on the bottom to flare it out for making the trunk area with the roots and stuff like that. Just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm kind of going for. This is just a drawing I kind of got. Right now I'm working on this section right here, which is going to be overall 6 feet tall. It's going to be broke up at 16 inches. That's where the hinge is going to be. And then it's going to go right here. Now I'm going to have another section on top right here that's going to be removable for storage purposes. That's going to be about 4 feet tall, or 48 inches. Overall, I kind of want to go with about 10 feet for the overall height, because I want this to be a nice, tall, big-looking tree and all that. Now, I might be getting a little carried away with my drawing. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it look like I want to, because this is kind of really my first time making a tree. The other one literally was just a PVC pipe and some poo noodles. attached to it. So, but actually make like a tree like this, carving it the whole 9 yards, it's kind of a first for me. So right now it doesn't look too impressive, but I'm sure we'll see it start to come together soon. All right, so for now I'm going to go ahead and start just doing some rough carving of it at the moment. Nothing too precise, nothing too fancy, more or less just kind of start rounding out some of the corners, start taking that out and doing a little bit of flare down there, taking some of this excess off up here, figure out how I want to make this section right here where this is going to branch up and stuff like that. And the biggest thing is obviously make it sit flat. So you can see like right now it's definitely not sitting very flat because of the way that all the pieces are kind of glued together. They're not nice and straight. So I'm going to take my chainsaw, I'm going to start on that first and kind of go from there. Like I said, I'm not going to get too precise or too detailed, just enough to kind of give it somewhat shape so I can kind of get an idea what direction I'm going with this. All right, so I got the basic shape kind of done here. Now I'm not going to go through and do all like the fancy stuff like the bark and things of that nature until after I got the whole thing done. I got the mechanical thing working. The reason why is because I don't want to make the mechanical thing and find out that for some reason, say I got to modify something and I got to ruin everything that I just did. So I'm going to save all that stuff to pretty much till the very end before I'm going to do the painting and stuff like that. The next thing is I got to put another piece here for that one portion on my drawing that you saw where it looked like I have a branch up here that's kind of broken. This will be carved into a knot. I'll probably put a couple other knots in a few places. And then I got to cut some foam for this section right here where it had that branch that kind of comes up and has a few little things on the top. The next thing after I do that is figure out how I'm going to attach it. Now, I left this hollow for a couple reasons. One, material. Two, my plan is when I build a mechanical rig for the bottom, I'm going to have two pieces of plywood, and that's what's going to have the hinge on, and that's what's going to allow it to go like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put a 2x4 screwed to that plywood, go all the way up this backbone, and I'll put a piece of plywood up here at the very top. So when I put this piece on, when I put it on, it'll have another piece of plywood that'll be the receiving portion. I'll just be able to put a few screws into it. It'll all be painted to where it all blend in. You won't see it. Plus, also you're really not going to see that top section anyways, because I'm going to try to recess it down just a little bit. But when I put all the 2x4s in there, I'll blow some expansion foam. It'll lock everything in place. So the next step right now is to go ahead and start cutting some material for this portion. Find one of my drops that I could use to glue up here, and then continue moving forward. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I went ahead and I glued these two together and these two together, so they're nice and dry. And I cut a fifth one right here. My game plan is I want to essentially build, like I said, some kind of reinforcement, almost like a skeleton, essentially on the inside of it to give it some rigidity, plus give me something to attach my plywood to. So I cut the fifth one here. This is the one I'm going to hollow out to put my reinforcement in. So what my game plan is, I'm just going to use a 2x2. I'll put it on. I'll probably, cut 45s or whatever I need to do on another piece. So I can run a piece up here, try to make it to where I can, get the wood as far up on these branches as I possibly can, just to give them as much strength as I possibly can. But I also realize that, it's not going to be overall big enough to really fit the tree now that I added the extra pieces. So I cut another one. So only one of these is still going to be hollowed out, but it's going to end up being 6 overall thickness, which will give me 12 inches, which will help make it fit my tree a little bit better. Now, it's going to be a lot of carving, shaving this sucker down, but I also want to make sure I have enough material. I don't want to get it up there and not have enough to work with and have to glue something later. I'd rather have it ready to go, get it up there and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to start by getting these cut, getting it ready. Then I'll get one of these hollowed out, get the plastic ripped off these, glue it together, and hopefully at that point I'll be able to start carving the rest of the tree. All right, so I got the reinforcement in here. I added an extra piece right here, so this way I have extra material to anchor my plywood to. Now, if it weren't for the fact that I was making the tree tip forward, I wouldn't bother going through all this extra reinforcement, but I want to make sure that obviously it doesn't break when it leans forward. So the plan here is get all this glued together, let it dry really good. I'm going to work on making a little bit of my structure for this. So I can put the plywood on the top of that. So once it's all dry, I got the plywood on it. I'm going to actually marry the two together. And once they're married together, then I can start, shaping and carving. So this way everything blends in properly. So let's go ahead and get this glued up. I'm going to show essentially what my plan here is. What it is, I have the back that I left hollow. I screwed a 4x4 post to my plywood with 4 screws in the bottom. Put a brace on the back side so this way makes it nice and sturdy. The plan here is for this to go over top here like this. And I cut 2 discs right here. And what my plan here is I've already made my lines. I'm going to set this on top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to carve out essentially this section right here, allowing this plywood to sit completely flat, even with the top of the foam here. After I do that, then I'll take the other piece, put the hinge on there, put it on there, take the upper section, maybe I'll put some paint or something on here. I'm going to take the top, I'm going to set it down, try to get as even as I can. So this will leave a mark on the bottom, round out the bottom. So this way, when these both sit together, the tree should sit almost perfectly flat on top of here. And what that's going to do is that should give me my nice little, pivot right here. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to carve this out, and then I'll probably push it in place and get it where I want it to be. And then I might have to put a couple shims or something back here, but I'll probably blow some expansion foam, lock everything in position. So let me go ahead and start on that. So I got the bottom and the top put together. I only have the top just kind of temporary on there. It's not going to be finalized until I get like the top done, and things like that. So right now I just made these little blocks right here, and I ran some 6-inch long screws at a 45-degree angle down into it. So it grabs material, so this way it holds it on until I'm ready to fully commit and make it solid one piece. And then what I'll do is I'll blast a bunch of expansion foam all up out the whole thing, and that's essentially should lock it in place. Then the upper section, like I said, it's all going to be attached, to a piece of plywood that's up here. So the only thing this is really going to be holding is itself. The upper section will be essentially attached to essentially the backbone of this right here. I'll have a mechanical mechanism that's going to be moving this. I'm also going to put a safety chain or rope from here down. So this way, if say something malfunctions, it'll only go so far and not fall down, so I ain't got to worry about it hurting nobody. But essentially, the whole mindset of what I'm doing here is this right here. I'm going to do some acting real quick. So So the plan is I'm going to have a character kind of back here. He's going to have his hands on it like this. You know, he's kind of be looking at him like this. I'll have light shining on him so they kind of really see him as the focal point. When they get close enough, he'll just move the tree like that, and then he'll pull the tree back like that, and they'll just. So that's kind of the game plan. So we'll just see how things turn out as I move along with this. So let's continue working on it. Okay, so I'm getting ready to carve the top. I got the wood in place. So this way, when I get done, I can actually, on the backside here, run screws down into it. That's just going to lock it on top. I'm going to be honest with you at the moment, though. I sure hope this turns out quite like I'm hoping, because at this moment I'm not sure I'm liking it too much. But I'm already this far, so I'm going to give it a shot. If I just don't like it when I'm done, or I screw it up, then I'll just do something a little different, maybe a little more low profile or something. But let's go ahead and start carving this and see what happens. Back here in the shop, I went ahead and I put it back on top. I had that big void right here. So what I did is I put some paper and some masking tape. And so when I blew the expansion foam in there, it keeps these two pieces from getting stuck to each other. Plus I had a few areas where I had some seams that needed to be filled a little bit. I wanted to build this one out a little bit more. That's why I stopped carving it, because there really wasn't enough there to do anything. So I went ahead and added a couple more pieces, a couple screws just to hold it temporarily until that dries. Once that dries, I'll go ahead and do a little more carving on it. Then I'm going to use some regular sandpaper, start sanding it down, get it a little bit smoother, define the edges a little bit more. And then at that point, I'll start deciding what I'm going to do about bark. If I'm just going to do a bunch of expansion foam on it, or if I want to try to carve it, or what I want to do. But so far, this is where I'm at with it. The top came out a little better than I was expecting. I think after a little bit of refining, it might look a little bit better. So, but here I am with this part. So once this dries, we'll continue moving forward. All right, so I'm at this point right now. I'm pretty happy with the way it's overall turning out, as far as the overall shape and everything like that. I did just glue those pieces on the bottom, so I gotta wait for that to dry so I can feather those in. And I gotta take some sandpaper and sand it and everything like that to get rid of all the areas from where the chainsaw, kind of makes this really rough kind of look to it. Then after that, I gotta figure out what direction I'm gonna go as far as either a bark or like an old petrified wood kind of look. I mean, because if it's supposed to be an old dead tree, it might not even have bark on it, or I might just go with maybe a lighter, bark that's not so heavy or something like that. I'm not sure. I'll figure that out as I go along. Now, I know there's much simpler ways of building a tree for a Halloween prop. I could have just got some bendable material and bend it into a cylindrical shape, or I could use those cardboard tubes that they use for concrete, blew some expansion foam and stuff like that on there. But I didn't really want to be bound to the something that's already in a shape, and then you're trying to modify it from there. I wanted to kind of build it as I went along so I can make everything line up and everything work the way I wanted it to do, so I didn't have a bunch of extra pieces or seams or stuff like that. I wanted it to look not as natural as possible. So I kind of went this route, but it'll probably be a long time before I go this route again on something like this, because not only is it taking a very long time to make between the dry time of all the expansion foams and carving and expansion foam again and carving and all that kind of stuff, not to mention the mess this thing is making in my yard right now. Here, I got to show you this. This is my backyard at the moment. I got pieces all over the place. I mean, it's everywhere. That right there is a huge pile that I raked into a huge pile. And you see, it got a little windy the other day, so I got pieces starting to go all over the yard and all kinds of stuff. So I just picked up some of those big, huge trash bags so I could clean up this mess right now. But you can see the mess that this thing is making is unreal. But overall, it's been a fun little project so far, and I'm looking forward to getting to the point where I can start putting some texture on this thing and start putting some paint and start making this thing look like an old dead tree. All right, well, what started out is I'm just going to go ahead and get all that foam and everything all cleaned up to turning into cleaning up the entire backyard. I ended up cleaning up that entire wall right there of all that stuff that was there. I took all my lumber, stacked everything all nice and neatly along the side of the building here. What kind of turned out to just be a squirrel moment, and ended up cleaning the entire backyard. So let's get back to the tree now. Okay, so I'm kind of at the point where I don't want to keep fiddling with it just for the fear of I might mess something up and then have to keep gluing pieces on and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to kind of leave it as is. You see, I got these bottoms kind of sanded down some. I started adding a little bit of foam to look like a heavy duty vine. I'm going to put a little bit more on there than that. I just got a little bit more sanding just to kind of get rid of some of these marks from my disc sander that I was using to knock it down quickly. Other than that, what are we doing next for the bark or for the texture? So I'm just going to use a rasp. I'm going to use the kind of the rounded end, and I'm just going to go on it, and it's going to just kind of go like this down the entire thing, just to kind of rough it up. And then after I do that, then I'll kind of come back and just kind of wipe it, so this way it kind of levels it out, but kind of gives me a little bit of texture. You see, I kind of did a little bit down in this area, and I think it'll look all right, especially once the paint's on there, because I got to add a couple layers of paint, so that paint's going to fill that stuff back in, so it's not going to look too terrible. And then I'm going to start kind of painting this thing, and we're going to see what it looks like. All right, so I just finished the last little bit of carving on the vines, kind of thinning them out a little bit, making them a little bit more uniform, especially where they intersect with each other. Next step is go ahead and get this mess cleaned up. I got just a little bit of caulking to do in a few spots, and I'm going to get ready to start painting this thing. All right, so it's all done, dry, ready for paint. If you're wondering what I was applying on it, all that was just a mixture of white latex house paint and thin set tile mortar. Pretty much the same stuff that you use if, say, you're going to be putting tile on the floor of your home. You would normally mix it with water and all that, but instead of using water, I used latex house paint. That just kind of get almost like making a form of a monster mud, essentially. So it gets a little bit better bite on that styrofoam than the water base would be. So, but I did move it to another location in the yard because during this time of year, I tend to lose my sunlight over there due to the trees, casting a bunch of shade. Not trying to make a joke since I am working on a tree prop, but I do lose my sunlight over there. But I'm going to go ahead and start painting this and start making it look like an old tree. All right, so I made it to this point right now. I'm going to try to follow the same paint technique I did on the last one with the animated crow, where I started off with a gray base, and then I'm going to slowly work in like the browns, the lighter grays, greens, and stuff like that to try to generate the look I'm going for. But for now, I'm going to be closing out this half of the video. What I want to do is the second half, I want to start working on the mechanism and the character that's going to be standing right there. And the reason I'm doing that is because what I want to do is just in case I got to make a modification or something like that, and I got to say I got to do something to the tree or something like that, I'd be able to fix it and blend it back in easily right now because it's just one solid color, it's just gray. If I wait till after I do all my paint work, and a lot of times when I'm doing some of these projects, I'll actually be taking a lot of my paint jugs and I'll add a little here, add a little there, and I'll generate a color that I like. And it's really hard to do that twice. So if say I do all that and I say I got to make a modification of some kind, it's going to be hard for me to blend it back in versus if I just wait. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be closing this one out so I can work on the second half. So in the meantime, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button for me. Leave me a comment, tell me what y'all think of my version of a giant styrofoam tree, essentially. Hit that notification bell so this way when the next video is published, you get notified. In the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.